any other element of Islam or in your lived experiences in Islam that you believe help create stronger community bonds? Haroon, would you like to maybe intro into that?
Sure. I'm gonna, I was thinking about this question as I was, as I was preparing today, and it occurred to me that sometimes, our weaknesses can become strengths, and our strengths can prove to be weaknesses. I think that's just the nature of life, and I think that there are, certainly elements of Islam that provoke very strong um, desire for community. Uh, that can also create complications for creating community. And one of those is there's this concept, that's fundamental to Islam, this idea that everything comes from God and is sustained by God and returns to God. And so, on a very simple moral level, that strikes a devastating blow against ethnocentrism, against classism, against racism, in the sense that we all come from the same place. And so, for one person to elevate themselves over another is most often an act of arrogance with no basis in fact, right? And so you have this powerful instinct in Islam to identify as part of a global community. And one of the challenges now has become that, that was very easy to do on a local level in very early Islamic history when, Islam was pretty much confined to a city state and everybody pretty much knew everybody. And now we have a challenge of tremendous diversity and how to basically draw the boundaries, right? So I think as Dima very, helpfully alluded to, we have so many different layers of identity, religiously, ethnically, nationally, so on and so forth, ideologically, and where are the boundaries? And so, one of the interesting things I've seen in recent years is sometimes people will say, "I'm just Muslim," if they're asked to identify as Sunni or Shia and things like that. And I think that's actually quite noble as a sentiment, insofar as people don't want to indulge fractious debates that pull people apart instead of bring them together. The danger to doing that, though, is that sometimes it unintentionally flattens differences of experience that basically enable people to access or not access community services in reality. So I'll give you a simple example, right? I used to live in New York City. I lived in Manhattan for a long time. I attended a mosque where, people were very much like me. And so I was very easily engaged with the community and felt like my voice was heard. And I moved to Brooklyn several years after that, and my local mosque was mostly Pakistani, like I am in origin, but a very recent immigrant background, and was entirely closed to me. I don't think in any sort of malevolent or malicious way, but just from the fact that I had very little in common with the people who were worshiping there, and my concerns were not their concerns. And so, there's this aspiration towards, well, we're all one community, we're all one faith, we all belong together, we all come from the same place. But what that sometimes obscures is the fact that there's actually a lot of tension and privilege and exclusion that operates in those spaces around gender, around race, around class. And so I think it bears keeping in mind that, Islam, like any other religious community, any other kind of community, contains a lot of issues of exclusion and real experiences of marginalization. And some of the most important work we have to do now is to identify those, to acknowledge those, and then to build around them and through them and with them in ways that increase feelings of shared participation and belonging from the beginning of the process to the outcome of the process. Yeah.
Very well said. Very well said. And I couldn't agree more in terms of intersectionality being something that is more and more becoming a theme, not just, for some, but for all, and to recognize how that plays a part in how we interact with others. You're right. If you are in a mosque, it can be where you're like, okay, theoretically, we should all just, be the same. What's up? High fives. And then that's not what's happening, because there's so many different lenses of our perspective that I don't think come to the forefront until we're forced to confront them. I love that anecdote. Thank you, Haroon. Dima?
Yeah, I love that too. Actually, I didn't even think of the question in that way, and it kind of sparked a different thought process that I originally had, but I'll share both. In terms of Haroon's experience, he's right. Like, one of the reasons my co-founder and I started 200 Muslim Care is the purpose of, we kept seeing this segmentation of the Tampa Bay Muslim community. And we're like, okay, this is the Arab mosque. This is like the Pakistani mosque. This is, the Shi'i mosque. Like, everybody was kind of like in different groups. And we were like, let's stop this and let's kind of bring everybody together under one voice, and still appreciate everybody's unique experiences and differences, but the basic commonality is that purpose to do good. So that's what our foundation is about, in terms of, we leave the differences at the door and we come together as for a common purpose. But originally, the way that I thought about this question was, it reminded me of something my co-founder Farah said, and in the sense that what helps create a stronger bond in Islam is when she has a stronger relationship with God, like when she increases her spirituality and when she increases her prayers, it makes her strive to be a better person in all aspects, which includes caring for her neighbors and giving back to the community. So I kind of like take it in the sense that, when you love somebody so much, you want to do more for them. It's the same idea for Muslims. So you just want to do more for the sake of Allah, and that gives you that feeling of connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point too, in that, I think that religion, especially for those that are outside of it, it can seem somewhat mysterious or vague, or something that's not very accessible. But I think tapping into that universal understanding of love and what love compels you to do, especially for those that are in your community, I think that's a great way of expressing that and conveying that to people who haven't had that opportunity to explore that. So thank you. Kind of related, I know that Haroon, you had mentioned before, this worldwide Muslim community. And if I'm not mistaken, am I saying this correctly? Correct pronunciation? Perfect, thank you. Which is loosely understood as the worldwide Muslim community. This is a concept that fascinates me, because I love to study religions myself, and I've found this is a very unique term, especially in Islam, but in general, in the study of theology. And Dima, I kind of turn this one over to you and ask you, in your experience, what does Ummah mean to you, or look like in action, especially considering it's how you have sisters from many different backgrounds?
Yes, Ummah is that word gives me chills, because it's exactly what the 200 Muslim who care is. It's when my sisters unite together for a common purpose, because our faith encourages us to take action for those in need. And our religion, it is open to anybody. Not our religion, I'm sorry. Our group is open to anybody, but our majority is the 200 Muslim sisters. But I haven't experienced that. I tried to belong to a community for 6 years in South Shore, like that's the part of town that I live in. And I was part of the 100 Women Who Care, which is a similar model to what we do. It's kind of where we took inspiration for our giving circle model, but we do it a little bit differently. I was part of that founding group, and it took us about 6 years to achieve the 100 member mark. And for the longest time, it was a fluctuation. It was like people would leave and come and go, but it just wasn't getting the traction that it needed. But when me and my co-founder Farah decided to join together to create 200 Muslim Who Care, it took us one day from our ummah to tell them that this cause is important, and they answered the call in one day. We had 100 members from the very first start. So, it's because we have purpose within our religion that Allah never decreases our wealth. It gives them this freedom of knowing that it will be returned to them. Whereas I remember taking a class at the Nonprofit Leadership Center, which is another nonprofit organization here in Tampa that helps develop different board members and nonprofit organizations. And I remember a woman asking, she's like, well, it's really hard for me to ask for people to give. It's really, what if they don't have the money? And in my head, I was thinking of myself, like of some of our sisters in our group, which I know they live paycheck to paycheck. They save their money each month to donate to our organization. And those members are so much more important to me than the members that have much higher status in terms of, economic status, because they know that God is not going to decrease their wealth and they're doing something for the greater good. They just have this, they don't have fear of that wealth, they just want to contribute, and they know somehow it's going to come back to them. So I feel like that piece of the puzzle of that ummah, that brings us, that gives us that stronger connection, and it allows us to do what we do so easily.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, Dima. Thank you. And I think that gives a lot more insight too into how you can consider the different members of your community and their needs as well in giving. It's an interesting point. Thank you. Haroon?
Yeah, no, I think, one of the beautiful things about being part of American Muslim communities, for all the challenges and complexities and difficulties that exist, is that, we are a microcosm of the global ummah. And I believe, alongside Jehovah's Witnesses, American Muslims are the most ethnically and racially diverse religious community in the United States. But then it flips too, that on an international level, American Muslims are the most ethnically diverse Muslim nationality in the world, alongside possibly Canadian Muslims. We're further unique in the West in that, there is a substantial population of relatively recent immigrant origin, for lack of a better term, as well as a substantial indigenous Black Muslim population. And so, it's just, and it's beautiful to see all of this together, right? So, our local mosque, just about 10 minutes away, is just this fascinating community of people from all different places, from people who have, deep roots in Ohio, to folks who literally moved here like a few weeks ago, folks who, came as refugees, folks whose families have been here for decades, if not centuries. And, now we all have to figure out how to work together, which is another challenge, but it is a really beautiful image of Islam in action. And I think one of the most profound moments I've experienced was for the Eid holiday. There's two major Muslim holidays. The most recent one was, I believe, back in July, if I remember correctly. And it was after a lot of folks had gotten vaccinated. And so the mosque was open. I mean, we were socially distancing, but it was open for the first time in a long time. And people come in their, finest clothes, however they define that, right? So sometimes it's something from back home. Sometimes it's the suit and tie. Sometimes people show up looking like they forgot it was Eid, or couldn't find their nice clothes, which I'm sure happens, right? But like, it was just really cool. It was beautiful to see. And, for me, that just it's a part of, what it's like to be part of a global community on a very micro scale.
Definitely. And I did not know those statistics actually about the most ethnically diverse populations, and that's really interesting because, I think about all the challenges that we're going through as a nation, and then you superimpose that onto the globe and in different regions and different levels of intensity of these struggles that are not also shared by all groups. And I think it's, a question that goes back to even the founding of the US and a lot of countries actually, but definitely the US, of how are we going to make this all work, and really make progress in our community struggles when we have so many differences to not overcome, but possibly bridge. I think that that's always at the heart of us different humans coming together. for sure. So this brings me to another question, which I'd like, Haroon, if you could take the lead on this one. How have international events concerning the Muslim community, the Ummah, such as the most recent bouts of Israeli-Palestinian violence, Uyghur camps in China, Taliban takeover in Afghanistan, of this kind of nature, how have these impacted how you relate to these struggles locally or within a local lens?
Well, I think what makes for a complex reality, and that's probably my like word of the day. So I apologize for being redundant, but I was actually thinking as I was looking at this question, I was thinking of something that happened when I was in high school, way back in the 1990s, and our mosque partnered with a number of Christian and Jewish charities to help facilitate the settlement of refugees from Eastern Europe into where I grew up, New England. And these folks were Muslims from the Balkans whose families had gone through horrific violence and had been fortunate to escape and were being settled in the United States. And families were basically partnered with refugee families as sort of being resources for them and facilitating for them. And we were matched with a family with several young children. And the youngest of them was the first to pick up English because he was 4 or 5 years old. And, at that age, you're just like a sponge. And his nickname became Baklava because that was the first word that we knew in common, that we shared, that we communicated around. And I remember the first time, and I just, like, just to give you a descriptive of this, like, they're white Muslims, right? Like, they're Eastern European, right? Like, blonde hair, blue eyed, right? They look like my classmates in a very white New England town. And so for us, they're very unusual because we're used to a reality where Muslims are brown, right? Because most of our community was Pakistani. And the first time I brought, I came with him to the local mosque in Massachusetts. We were sitting down, and a friend of mine, who's African American, came and sat down next to us and said salam, and we started chatting. And Baklava, who's sitting next to me, his mouth drops open, and I was like, "Oh, like, where is this going?" Right? Like, this is a little bit uncomfortable, right? And he leans over and whispers to me, utterly incredulous, and asks, "There's Black Muslims?" And I remember like laughing at first and then realizing that he was serious. And that, in his entire life, he had never been in a place where Muslims were not white. And, I say it's sort of a trite story, but the reason I say is that, one of the ways in which these conflicts affect Muslims is not just on an emotional and spiritual level, insofar as we feel solidarity with other Muslims in places like Palestine, in places like Kashmir, and we feel emotionally and spiritually and theologically and morally connected to those realities and experiences, and we feel obligated, and we are obligated to advocate. But it's a question of how we articulate that advocacy. So, I was having a conversation with our daughters recently, and it was so interesting because, for many people of color in the United States, Trump's Muslim ban was like set off alarm bells. I think it was in December, before the campaign really took off, that he proposed banning entry of all Muslims into the United States. And then, of course, they, played around with it and pretended like it wasn't a religion-based ban, but, we all know it was. And at the same time, he also took a firm stand against the genocide of Muslims in Western China. And talking to some folks who had come from there, their experience of Trump was the first leader in the world who bothered to stand up and say what was happening to them was wrong. And now, how do you square that experience with the experience of a Muslim from another experience in reality, where Trump's policies have been undeniably harmful, like actually and actively harmful, right? Not just theoretically or rhetorically, but actually. And so I think what I mean is that, these are conflicts that for Muslims in our sense of ummah, we feel a sense of solidarity, we feel pain, it hurts. Not to mention what it actually means to be from a place and then have that experience. But on top of it, to then live in a community where people bring these experiences and feel these passionate commitments, and then have to negotiate with each other on how we live out these commitments, right? Where do we put our energy? What is the greatest source of injustice that we should direct our attention to? And I think one of the challenges of human life is that, there is no perfect justice in this world, right? If there was, then we wouldn't have to believe in an afterlife, right? And the idea of like a final judgment, right? That people, because many folks do wrong and seem to get away with it in the world, but I think it's a challenge for all of us to figure out, well, what do we do, right? And where do we uh, draw boundaries? I mean, it's funny. I lived in New York for a long time, and I'll just end with this. And I lived in a very New York bubble, and our next door neighbors are Muslims and enthusiastic Trump supporters. I am not an enthusiastic Trump supporter or a Trump supporter, right? Um, which I suppose would have been obvious by now, but and they're wonderful people, and they are always there to help, not just us, but in community work. Some of the most generous people I've ever met. Like, if you text and say you need help, there's not a question of what do you need. It's like, I will be there, right? And then I will figure out what you need after I show up. And then what do you do with that? And so I think that's just a challenge, right? And they have their own moral commitments, and sometimes they overlap, and sometimes they are in like stark juxtaposition.
I mean, so many points that I felt like hit in my heart. I think the biggest one is this understanding that, our worldview is so limited until we're exposed to what we haven't been before, and how that changes how we advocate. That was such a good way to say that, Haroon, in that I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that this theme of intersectionality and its impact on how we approach collective and individual struggles, especially when it comes from a national level, such as the policies that you were talking about. I again, there's no answer that we have right now as a human race, but I think that you really touch on some excellent points there on how we can begin to start this more progressive and effective way of allying for one another within the same religion and also outside of it, and our view of it. And I would like to know if Dima, if you have anything to add to this discussion.
I mean, yeah, he mentioned some amazing points and kind of got me thinking, in the sense that when he mentioned that, what cause do you choose? Like, which one is your importance, which is your priority? And in the lens of 200 Muslim Who Care, I've encountered that situation when I'm trying to recruit membership here in our local community. And when, people are on a limited income, they have to choose. Do they send the $100 to people in need overseas that are struggling with war? Or do they send the $100 in a land of opportunity and resources here in the United States? And it is a huge conflict. And I have to be respectful of the ladies in my community that choose not to participate in our organization, because they feel that the priority is much higher overseas, because the resources here are so plentiful. It's hard, you're frustrated because, we like to say we lay roots here. Your children will be born, will always be here. They're not going to go live overseas, but they're torn between which one is a greater need. And so that's the only kind of answer I can share, because it's a complicated situation where people choose to donate.
Definitely.
And it's unfortunate, actually, that they have to, that the constant war in the Middle East and the trauma that is always there because as a result of whether it's occupation or other forces trying to determine where people should to control others, that's kind of the unfortunate case, in the sense that we have to constantly worry about overseas. I wish we would stop having to worry about overseas so we can focus on our community here.
Definitely. And I think it comes down to this how it seems like the world is full of trauma at the moment. And I think especially, within certain groups, I mean, everyone is having their own challenges and their own struggles, and whether that's mirrored just in their local context or internationally, like what we're discussing about, I think that it is just hard in general to get everybody in a similar way, because we are looking at it from such different viewpoints. Harkening back to Haroon's story of baklava not knowing about Black Muslims, that is something that, I don't know. I just think that at the end of the day, education, and exposure is how we're going to move forward in a lot of these. And I want to thank you both for diving deep with me on these questions. I mean, unfortunately, we're running out of time for our panel, but I want to first and foremost thank you both for your contributions and the work that you do. Dima and Haroon, you both contribute immensely to not only understanding of the Muslim community for people who are not Muslim, but I also think that in this conversation alone, you've brought in a lot of insights that dig deeper into the question of what is community in Islam, and also what is community? How do we get there? And how do we be what we want to see? So I want to thank you both so much. And if there's anything you'd like to say to the audience before we transition, please feel free.
Would you like to go ahead, Dima?
I don't know. I just want to say thank you to those who are taking the time to learn, and it's so inspiring to see that people are interested in learning more about others, and I just appreciate their time.
Yeah, I just echo that and say, it's always great to see people engaged in these conversations, and to see the good work that you guys are doing and have really been pursuing is really remarkable. And in a time when there's a lot of bad news, it's always nice to get a lot of good news. So thank you.
Yes, well said. Yes, well, thank you both. And for anyone who is in the room right now, please know that you can reach out to 200 Muslim Women Who Care to support their excellent work in the community. You can also support Haroon's excellent work as he's contributing to the community through getting one of his books, which again, How to Be a Muslim in American Society. I cannot recommend it enough, as well as use the one-page document that we will be sending out after this. So with that, thank you to our wonderful panelists. And seeing as how we've given you all a bunch to think about and process, we will now be going into our breakout rooms. In just a moment, you should be seeing an invitation on your screen that's going to ask you to go to one of 5 breakout rooms. Please accept that invitation. And in 20 minutes, we shall see you back here after you've discussed and processed with your facilitators and the rest of your group. So to start off, I'd like to invite Carla and Harrison to come share what they talked about in their group.
Hello. Everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So just a little bit of what we talked about. Carla and I actually got to talk to Meredith earlier, and I was really appreciative of the feedback that we got, because something that she had shared with us was she actually works with Afghan refugees and helps them get to safe locations. And so that's actually something that she's in the process of doing right now. And I thought that was really helpful for me to get kind of a better perspective. Because I was saying, I'm just a civilian, I don't have access to a lot of the resources to build, safe spaces for refugees, which is something that we're facing a lot in current events right now. So I thought it was really insightful to get that perspective and to talk about kind of like not isolating a single story. So like something we also talked about was taking one person's individual experience and making it part of like a nice little puzzle, just making it part of like a mosaic almost. We don't want to isolate one person's individual experience, because somebody of that same identity, somebody else might have a completely different one, and we don't want either of those to be lost on us. If you have anything, Carla.
No, actually, yeah, that was quite a good synthesis of what we spoke. But what we heard from Meredith too was that she likes the way she's learning right now, this sense of community, because it comes like in an organic way. No, it's not forcing it. It's just like it's happening, and she's learning out of it, and the others are learning out of it. So she was very happy about this kind of experience, and for us, it was very rich to get directly from someone that is there, no, practicing it. And we kind of talk also a little bit about what stereotypes could uh, offer or bring in a community. Know that sometimes that we have to get rid of them and face a reality where we say, okay, we're all humans, and then you cannot say we're different. No, of course, you have to realize of the differences of each one, but you cannot totally disregard someone by one thing or another. So rather to see the way we can create a community in every single step or every single so part or society or situation, sorry. And not just to say the communities have to be this way because that's the way we are used to. No. So we got into that point of being very empathetic, you say, and yeah, to be learning on a daily basis on an organic way how to create it.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Harrison and Carla, as well as Meredith. I think that that's a great point of how to create community, whether you are working with people who are refugees or from outside of your bubble, to expand and learn how you can create community across those bubbles. Thank you very much, Group One. Our next facilitator, Hilal, also has some experience working with Muslim refugees, and I would like to invite him to please come and share. Hi, Hilal.
Hello, thank you very much, Anna, and thank you to Group One. Seems like it was an interesting discussion. Ours was also interesting. Too bad it was too short. I think we were just getting into it. We can't really talk too much about these topics. We were lucky to have Dima with us actually in the group, and we realized that there are some similarities other than across the community level that I will tackle now. We have two participants who happen to have daughters who know each other and play sports together. So that was interesting to see our version of a community. And it was nice to hear from the participants sharing stories on their understanding of Ummah and community and the interfaith interaction. Some of children who went to a Baptist school with children who went to a Muslim school, and that was would sound like an extreme combination. When people just communicate, you end up with more similarities. And we spoke about practices that could improve interfaith. It could help, the communication. And some of the ideas that came were community service, helping others, showing care. I would also summarize it as Carla said, empathy, showing understanding, basically, and through contact, basically. You have to meet someone. A participant said that the first time she met a Muslim was in college, which is not very surprising. I would say I come from Lebanon, and I met someone in Lebanon who told me that she was 25 years old when she met a Muslim for the first time. We worked together in the north, which is predominantly Muslim. So in the US, like given the diversity, it sounds like bizarre. However, it is actually not. It's much, much more common than we think. And the last point, or one of the points that came, would be the generation and how we are moving forward, and how at least our participants expressed working on, let's see how our children are gonna be, and if they're gonna do better than the previous generation. I hope I was able to sum it up. And sorry, Dima, the time stopped when you were mentioning sports actually as an activity, which, as someone who works in psychosocial support, totally recommend it as an activity that combines people. And we talk about community, it definitely adds to that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you, Hilal, and also Dima for your contributions and everyone in your group. It sounds as if there was a real dialogue, not only between you all, but between what was said in the panel. I hear a lot of those similar themes of giving back, as well as hopefully the next generations are going to be doing better, partly because of our efforts. Excellent. Thank you, Hilal. Thank you so much. Our next facilitators, Pan and Ren, I'd like to invite you to come forth and share some highlights.
Thank you, Anna. So I will go ahead for this one. Ren and I, we were speaking to Sharon and Emily, and we talked about their personal experience being born in Christians and well, the experience with Muslims, the Muslim community. So what was a very important point in our discussion was how we need to move out of our comfort zones at times, you know, when this clueless bubble that we live in, where there's a lack of knowledge of other things. So for example, Sharon, she came to know about a lot of diversity once she stepped out of America. So that was an important point. And another very important point was the discussion about charity, you know. So it is very important to connect. And example, again, Sharon shared that she and her daughter, they make little packets of dates during the month of Ramadan, and then they distribute them between their co-workers, their neighbors, which is also a way of inviting dialogue around the community. However, at the same time, they also raise the importance of being critical about the way things are handled. For example, the different types of mosques that we've already discussed in the panels, the different types of Muslims, the diversity, and the way that inclusion works in those kind of spaces. That would be it. Thank you.
Actually, thank you. Thank you, Pankuri. Thank you so much. That's a great summary, I think, of a great discussion, sounds like. Ren, do you have anything to add?
No, I covered all of it. That was great.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you all so much. And I couldn't agree more. Charity is definitely a part of community. And I love how each group seems to be touching on this need to create more diverse communities through getting out of their own bubbles. That is definitely a key understanding, I think, tonight, folks. This is sounding, get out there, make some new friends. So thank you, Pankuri and Ren. We're going to move on to our next facilitator, Cherry.
Yes, thank you. So my group, we first shared about our personal stories first. And then when we respond to the questions, we think humanity is the very important key. So it drives us to really want to connect with each other and other persons. And then we also discussed about intersectionality, like maybe not only in relating to your religious background, every individuals have their own lives in different several sectors, like in work, friends, maybe friends from other countries. So basically, a person have a very rich or multi-layers background. And also we also think that in terms of practice, it is important to really celebrate the differences of individuals. When you realize that everyone has their own different intersectionality, you will think that not is always the best to just chase for maybe having the same level, or to think that. So it's important to celebrate the differences in different religions, maybe. And also in Muslim, maybe it is also beautiful. They don't have exclusivity, like they always welcome other people to join. So this is also like stressing the first point, like focusing on humanity, like it's transcendable to every layers, and it really connects people.
I love that.
I think it was very amazing discussions in this group.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm so happy to hear it. And I love that point of, at the end of the day, you may not know the exact religion of someone. You may not know exactly how to greet or practice that religion, but you can rely on the fact that they are human and that there's someone that you can connect with. Hopefully they're human, who knows? But they are human, meaning that we're not just out here conversing with, non-human beings. We're talking about the shared humanity that we all are a part of because we're part of the same human family. So thank you, Cherry, for reminding us of this. And our last share out is from Aisha.
Hello. So I was in the breakout room with Martha and Angsley, and we actually had a very nice discussion on community. Both of these wonderful people are professionals in their own field, and what Angsley is actually a lifelong learner, which I really loved to hear. And so Martha talked about how in the organizations that they work with, and this ties into intersectionality a little, that when they're working together in a Muslim organization, then they remove the identity based on your color. So it's not like they're Black Muslim, they're brown Muslim, they're Asian Muslim, they're all Muslims there. And that helps them work towards a shared goal of uplifting each other. For them, we discussed what community means, and we had two very important, but all not very similar, but aspects of community, in which Martha talked more about how you're coming from different intellectual backgrounds and different geographical backgrounds, but you're working together towards the same thing, to contribute to society and be a part of the Ummah. And Angsley talked about how community to them means that that you're living in a space, but caring for each other, knowing that everyone has different strengths, different weaknesses, and different needs. And community for them means to know how to care for each other and to use your own strengths and weaknesses to help each other out, and so that all of the people around you can be comfortable and live fulfilled lives. And at the end of the day, it's about meeting our needs and understanding each other and supporting each other.
I love that. I love that. Thank you, Aisha. And I think it's a good reminder too, to be real about what those strengths and weaknesses are. We might all come into a group setting or in a communal setting and be like, okay, well, you know what I mean? If you're not on my level, maybe we don't need to be worrying about it. But at the end of the day, it's that saying, a community is only as strong as its weakest link. So we need to all raise each other up. And I think that your group really touched on that. So thank you so much, Aisha. And thank you to all of our facilitators here tonight, as well as our participants. Truly, you all are the lifeline of this whole series, as well as with our panelists. So thank you all for participating. For our last portion of the program, we have a very special surprise, which my colleague Camila will walk us through.
Okay, hi everybody. So now we're getting ready for the exciting part of our meeting, which Anna kind of voiced in the beginning of our event, that at the end, we're gonna do a small quiz, which is actually a Kahoot game. And right now I'm gonna share my screen and we'll tell you very quickly how can you sign up. So I would like everybody to pick their device. It can be your phone or it can be your laptop. It just cannot be the device that you are joining the meeting from. And in order to join the game, you just need to log in on kahoot.it. And after that, at the top of the menu, you will see play. Here we go. We have the first player joining us. So you click play, and then please enter the game pin. Okay, here we go. Okay, please let me know if you're struggling with joining the game. Okay, here we go. Natasha Meredith. Okay. Okay, we'll give a few more minutes for the rest of the attendees to join us. Okay, Ren, Jerry, Harrison, Carla, nice. Beautiful. So I'm not sure if any of you ever participated in Kahoot game, but the way it works, we're gonna display questions on the screen, and you will need to answer through your phone. But here's the note, you would not see the actual response for each question, you will only see the answer buttons. And the other note that you need to know, you not only need to be right when you respond to the question, you also need to be quick. So if two people, for example, respond to the question correctly, the person who got the answer first will get higher points. Okay, I think we're ready to start. Okay, let's get started. What country has the largest number of Muslims? Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Iran, or Afghanistan? And we have 5 more seconds. Here we go. Oh, wow, we have 4 people responding right. Okay, and we go into this question 2. Meredith is taking the lead. Oh my God, look how close. Okay, next one. What percentage of the US population is Muslim? 1.1, 4.5, 3.2, or 9%? Only 2 people. Okay, let's see. Karim did well. Okay, as you see, you can lose your scores pretty quickly. Okay, and this question is true or false. Is it true that Islam means surrender or submission in Arabic language? True or false? Okay, quite a few people knew the right response. Okay, next one. Okay, Karim is taking the lead. Next. Which of the following is none among the 5 pillars of Islam? Profession of faith, following Islamic law, fasting during Ramadan, or pilgrimage to Mecca? Okay, doing good. And Karim is still on top. Okay, we have 6 more questions to go. The majority of Muslims identify themselves as Sufis Muslims, Shia, Sunni, or Bahas? Okay, a lot of people knew the right answer. Okay, Karim is doing good. Next one, true or false? The Islamic calendar is about 10 days shorter than the year in the Christian calendar. So do you think it's true or false? It was true. Next one. Here we go. Karim is going so much ahead of anybody else. Guys. Okay. The Arabic text of the Quran has been altered since the revelation. True or false? Okay. And the answer is false. Okay. Let's see. Okay, Karim is on fire, but we see H and I think it's Martha are getting close. And the next question is, what food is forbidden in Islam? Seafood, poultry, pork and pork products such as ham, sausage, or bacon, or cheese? Okay, everybody knew correct answer, finally. Here we go. Still the same top 3 people. Okay, and the 9th question is, non-Muslims are prohibited from visiting Mecca. Is it true or false? True. I only got 3 people answering it right. Okay, Sharon Apple's coming up. Okay. And the last question is, how many times should Muslims pray every day? Is it just 1, 3, 2, or 5? This is our final question, and we will see who our top 3 winners are. Here we go. And the third place winner is H and Dot. The second one is Sharon, and the first one is Karim. Congratulations. And I will stop sharing and we'll return to our room. So, as we promised in the beginning, all top 3 winners in our Kahoot game will receive a free large pizza from our partner, Papa John's. So I will send you out the promo codes. If you only can send me your email addresses so that I can send you the promo code, you can just directly send a message to me in the chat. But if not, I'm just gonna wait for you. I'm pretty sure that the questions were not exactly easy. So what do you think? Okay. Or yes. Okay. Very good. Perfect. And Tammy just dropped my email address in case you would like to contact me, and that way I can actually send you the promo code. Okay, Sharon, I got yours.
Camila, I'll take it over if you'd like. I know you
Sure.
got some pizza to give out over there, and I know it's going to get pretty intense. Well, everyone, I hope that was a finger licking fun game for everyone. Thank you, Camila, for walking us through it, for being our game master tonight. Here at Community Tampa Bay, we really care about learning, but we will not be offering pizza every time. So consider yourselves lucky for being a part of this opportunity. Congratulations, Kareem, Sharon, and H for your wins tonight. And thank you everyone for participating and for joining in on the fun. As with all good things though, our program is now coming to an end. Tonight, we learned so much about the value of community in Islam and how we can foster better relations across religions and identities. Thank you all for your openness and vulnerability in tonight's program. Pathways would cease to exist if it weren't for your participation and interest. Everyone in attendance tonight will be receiving a one-page list of resources to continue your learning after we leave this space, and we welcome you to send our team feedback by writing to info@communitytampabay.org. Again, that's info@communitytampabay.org. Thank you again to our wonderful, amazing, excellent panelists, Haroon Mogul and Dima Abu Olaim. I encourage everyone to look up their works and organizations if you're not familiar with them. The recording of tonight's panel will be available on YouTube once it's uploaded. Also, make sure to keep an eye out for our end of the year Pathways celebration happening in February 2022. You can learn more about this event at our website, communitytampabay.org/pathways. So as we leave tonight, I encourage you all to continue your learning, continue building your communities, and continue building the parts of you that help make your communities great. Remember, never forget that we never end growing. We just simply keep going on our journey. Have a wonderful evening, and please remember to keep community in mind and compassion in your heart. Have a good night, everyone.